Today's guest is a former Minot news reporter and a Michigan man. When he was in the Magic City, you could have found him behind the mic or on the drums. Joining me now is Jack Springgate, prize vocalist, former KMOT reporter, straight out of Libertyville, but we're going to get to that towards the end. Jack, looking back in your time in Minot, what did you enjoy working here the most about?
Well, there were a lot of great things. Obviously, I was moving to a completely new place. So, Ben, you were one of the first people that I met there working with you. So, already started off on the wrong foot.
Brilliant. Yeah, of course.
No, but...
how are you able to recover being a coworker of mine, Jack?
Lots of alcohol.
Yeah, maybe just a tad bit here, just here and there, I'm sure, right?
Well, I mean, we had a number of bonding moments that were definitely fueled through alcohol. I know, like, the first place we ever went out was Roosters.
Yeah.
And we basically went there every single time we went out. One, because you lived right across the street. And then, like, out of nowhere, they closed, and it's like, I had never gone there again, probably, like, halfway through my 2 years in Minot. So.
May the $10 all-you-can-drink deal at Roosters fondly rest in peace. But then I asked you about your memories, and that's a place you probably don't remember too much about, even though you know you walked through the door. So just in your time, maybe even covering KMOT stuff, what was it like for you?
Oh, it was a lot of fun because it was my first job in news. I mean, I'm on my second job, but that was really the place where I was able to, actually learn so much of what I include in my stories today, and how to be a storyteller, how to be in this business, how to work together with the newsroom. It was great because it was like my first place, and there was so much for me to learn. Like, I kind of attacked every day with the type of enthusiasm that I just wanted to get better, and helped me make some pretty good stories while I was there. Helped me give me an opportunity to move back to kind of around the area where I'm from, move up in markets, and the lessons in the newsroom and the lessons out of the newsroom were both just as valuable because I had the same friends in and out.
What was the best and worst parts of working in the sports department? Because I sent you to Timbuktu plenty of times.
Yeah, you don't have to feel bad about that exclusively, though.
Okay.
There were a number of times that, so that weight is lifted off your shoulders.
I can't feel bad about it, and I can't have pride in it either, is what you're saying?
Well, so that one time I was driving one of the news Chevys that broke down and never recovered. I guess I kind of just spoiled that story, but I was driving to Botno to cover the girls' regional tournament up there, and about 20 minutes past the Air Force Base, a little bit to where you go from that.
Right by the golf course and the Glenburn turn.
Yeah. I was maybe 5 miles away from the Glenburn turn, the one right turn you make while going from Minot to Botno, and that hour and a half drive. And the car just shut down completely. It turned off, and it was negative 10 degrees. So that was probably.
You weren't cold, were you?
I wasn't, because I had this parka, but I was I'm not opening any doors. And the worst part was I looked at my phone and I had no service at all.
That's Glenburn for you, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the only way I was actually able to get in touch with anyone was I was going up there to shoot basketball, and I had to send it back to Bismarck. I think it was a weekend. So I brought a live pack with me, and I also had a wireless router. So the live pack also didn't have any service, so that wasn't going to help me at all. But the router I would use for my computer so I could send those files back. I turned that on, and my phone connected with it, and I was able to Facebook message Joe, the news director, Mr. Joe Skrzyszewski, and I was able to relay a message through the fire and the flames to get myself saved. And I also was lucky because someone did pull over, and I was able to wait in their car for 20 minutes while I was waiting to get rescued.
How about when you were filling in for John Cole and you got the wanderlust of going to Montana, but then it was pretty scary though because didn't your phone completely shut down in like a dead zone?
Oh yeah, and it's done that a number of times too. It was a pretty. I mean, just kind of a frequent thing. Like I had service that was good everywhere else I've lived in the world, except like North Dakota. Because North Dakota's a Verizon state.
Yeah.
And I'm an AT&T person, so it's like I didn't get let into the club.
Yeah, you and your AT&T buddies had no chance going over to Montana, getting sketched
Right.
out when you were completely shutting down like you were going through like a dome or something.
Well, it was also weird because like right as I crossed the line, like the state line, like it was like they thought I was in the middle of Glacier National Park or something, just like off the face of the map. And that's when I went to go just check out the casino and kind of cross the border just so I could say I've been in Montana. I didn't get to take advantage of some of the cooler parts of the neighboring state as much as I would have liked to while I was up there. But I did drive across the border once.
I had better luck at the casino because I went down to Newtown for an early season NJCAA game. I think it was like either UTTC or like Williston State was playing down there. Why not? Had some time to get some early college basketball. Got a couple buckets around 12:15. I headed out, threw 20 in the machine, got the last pull down the slot machine, doubled up to $40. So all in all, it was a good trip. The only thing else I could have done is taken my own car for about that would have been, I'd say, probably $85 in expense report, but I'll just take the casino's money anyway. Because not enough people are able to do that, Jack. Really want to just drive that point home when you get to Newtown. Please try to win some money when we can all get back to the casino, right?
Right. I went to that casino a couple of times. I never did it while I was doing work, but there was one time where I went while I was technically on an assignment, but that was like super early in the morning before I was technically on the clock, so I'm deeming it as okay. And
exactly.
I lost $20 and left.
That's like me saying I had a press pass to watch the Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight there in the ballroom that they have there.
Yeah.
Basically. The other way from your Montana escapade was kind of another memory that you brought up to me when we were talking about doing an interview like this was covering the State B. You were there to see the rugby girls almost win it all, and you kind of enjoyed following the Powers Lake boys when they were able to make it to the big stage. Obviously, when you think Class B in North Dakota, the small town vibe is definitely there no matter what sport it is. How much did you enjoy covering stories like that?
Well, it's like something that you don't really find in many places anymore, how big like the small town schools really are. Like before that's the biggest division that there is. That's like, to me, the Class A, that's your prime time, that's your professionals. I feel like because there's less teams and it's a higher level, but those Class B feels like every single time you go to a game, it feels like a college game because everyone's so behind them and there's so many teams.
It's where you can have the March Madness feel because there's so many freaking teams.
Exactly. And also on that trip, that was just a really good trip in general. I'd never been to Grand Forks before. I had Rhombus Bros for the first time. I got to meet up with one of my buddies from college after one of the days of covering the event. And I met Daniel as well from Dakota Chappie for the first time. And he's the cow guy, if you've never seen him before.
A couple eccentrics hanging out in Forks, or what?
Yeah.
Forks was just on Barstool Pizza Review, wasn't it? It got like a 6.8 with the Rhombus brothers.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've actually had that pizza before.
Oh my god.
I had it live, though, not frozen.
Oh, okay. Well, congratulations to you. But, yeah, so just following just like the rugby team there in Forks, I mean, talk about the support that you kind of saw just in that tournament run specifically, because like we've seen it all over on the news and TV, and you were the one that was lucky enough to be in the building. What was it like?
Yeah. Well, even though they lost, that finals game went down to the wire, and it felt like the score just kept going back and forth. You couldn't tell who had an edge in that finals game. And at a certain point, I stopped film. I was done filming because it was getting to the end of the game. I had cut the games already, and I was just able to enjoy an amazing championship game that was 2019's championship game, and seeing it was interesting because rugby was a team that was comprised of so many seniors and leaders who kept contributing, and Kindred had like 3 freshmen that were just complete ballers, and I wasn't able to follow Class B girls this year, but I think it would have been very interesting to see how Kindred would have performed. Did y'all have a tournament this year?
Yeah, we had it for the girls, but the boys just got canceled recently. So we had one, but not the other. And you being a Chicago-Detroit guy, did you expect to maybe have to give North Dakota a little bit of credence when they played "Till I Collapse" by Eminem for the intros there?
That's just a song that pumps everyone. That one crosses state borders easily, so not shocked, and I'm happy that someone actually played rap in North Dakota.
Oh, yeah, there we go. That was like when Carson Wentz brought his receivers out to Fargo, and I think it was like Torrey Smith had the Instagram video. He's like, "Welcome to Fargo. There are no hip-hop stations."
There literally aren't, and that was very tough for me to deal with. My whole 2 years there, I was listening to a lot of rock and roll, feeling like I was in high school.
Who you got in the rap game right now?
Who am I listening to?
Yep.
I'm always listening to Migos.
But, absolutely. I think Evan Hunt will like that pick after the first 10,000 plays.
Yeah, that's a pick that'll get you kicked out of a club in North Dakota.
Speaking of more madness here, let's talk about from your listening to your performing. What was it like for you drumming at the old O? That's a relic now. You're like a legend because the building's not even up anymore. They have a brand new nightclub atmosphere there. But you were drumming with Top Dead Center, giving Tom Barry a break during sets. What was that like?
Yeah, that was just a lot of fun. Not a lot of people know this about me, but I was in a band in high school, and I played the drums, and I did vocals. So that was something that I did from, I think I was in that band from like 7th grade until basically senior year. We just jam in my basement. So I hadn't played, and then I had my drum set senior year of college, so I hadn't played like the drums in probably a year and a half by the time we did that. Probably closer to 2 years. So I was really nervous. But it was a song that we had played like in every single set. It Smells Like Teen Spirit. That one rolls off the top of the tongue. And that song's ingrained in my ability to play the drums. So I think like any time that song gets played and if I'm asked to rise to the occasion, I'll hop on and do a decent job, very Dave Grohl-esque job. And it got me a second gig, I got to play.
There you go. You got a call back from Top Dead Center?
I got called back at I can't remember if it was Rib Fest or if it was the State Fair.
Oh, you're a foodie. Those probably go right in between, or they run together so easily for you food buddies. But yeah, for sure. So you go from drumming that way. First of all, talk about the ovation that you guys got when you were done playing there at the O.
Well, it rained. We basically got kicked off. Like, at the O.
Yeah, at the old O. Yeah.
I was thinking.
The original.
No, it was all a dream. That's. I just remember playing my heart out, and then I just got out of that blackout moment. And it was like, where am I? All of a sudden, Ben Barr was handing me a drink, and I was pouring it over my face because I was just sweating lava. My hands were fired. No, none of that happened. But
I think I do have a set video. I might have to attach in the comments for this episode. You can see your performance with Top Dead Center.
Yes,
legendary.
I actually posted it in the comment of a video that popped up on Facebook of my band when I was in high school, and JR, one of the people who hired me to come to North Dakota, the news director down in Bismarck, commented, "I didn't know you were in a band," and I was like, "Yeah, you should have seen me play at the O." So I was able to slap that up in the comments and let that circulate a little bit.
So you're from behind the drum set to behind the microphone in a couple different capacities. You were the first PA voice of the Souris Valley Sabre Dogs, and also did PA for our Redeemers winter sports basketball teams. What draws you to jobs like that?
Well, it's like to me, it's a lot of fun, and I'm pretty openly a lazy guy. So if I find something that I can just get up and do and have fun with and not give me any anxiety about how I do, I'm pretty drawn to those things. So PA announcing is like, I'm around sports. I feel comfortable. I love talking about sports. And I think like my love for just commentating and being able to tell a story of what's going on even goes back to when me and my brother would play shinny in our room growing up and just calling those those games as we're playing it. So like when I had an opportunity to call a real sport, that's something that I really wanted to do. And that led into working with our Redeemers. And that was just a fun atmosphere, a fun job. I felt like I got to engage with the student section and the audience a lot more than you see in other basketball I just feel like sometimes even when we go cover something, it was like the athletic director or someone's dad. But like I just like to make a big deal out of it and try to make it a real thing. And so I had a lot of fun over exaggerating plays, just having fun making jokes and using the microphone to do that, getting the crowd hyped up. It's cool to see.
How are you able to survive an entire home schedule sitting courtside next to Jake Stack the entire time, the AD?
Oh, well, I always bring him deodorant. That's for... no, he doesn't smell.
He probably reps before and after that, so...
No, I mean, he was just a lot of fun. Like, when I say that, like, when we'd start a game, I had, like, my script, but from that point on, like, I had a decently long leash and an ability, like, he gave me opportunities to make the crowd laugh. And a lot of times, like, if we would have a slow game and Tessa Olsen wasn't putting up 30 points and 30 shots, it was an opportunity for me to just keep the crowd engaged. And Jake really let me be myself, which is the most important thing. And I hopefully rewarded him with some good play-by-play.
You're calling Tessa Olsen like the James Harden of our Redeemers with a 30-point, 30-shot rule, or what?
That's still 50%, right? That's pretty good.
I don't like to do math. It seems like they were the team that I pretty much have seen like the most aggressive base running in my life. Have you ever seen anything like that when you were behind the PA mic there at the Sabre Dogs game?
Well, Brock Baucom. Brock Baucom.
Let me tell you, Brock Baucom.
I did a story with him about he was on that first team, and I mean he was so fun to have up at the plate because I think it went like him, Mason Dennison, or EJ Rennell, or maybe it was like the reverse order of that, and all those guys were great contact hitters, and then EJ would just like demolish the ball.
Yeah, MVP.
But Brock was that guy who got on base. He could consistently hit singles, but turn them into doubles. I think he had a great technique, and then when I did a story with him the next year when he was assistant coach, he was telling me how basically one of his primary goals is to teach people base running. So if it wasn't him, I'm sure just maybe enlightening some of his teammates and having his ability to read bases and read situations where he could take advantage of the defense. If it wasn't him, that ability rubbing off on his teammates on purpose, I'm sure they were just watching him out there too. Because I think Brock had a huge. He was the heart of that first team that went all the way to the championships.
When you talk about the atmosphere of Sabre Dogs baseball, first of all, you might have had something to do with it. You were the PA guy, just bringing excitement to the field. And then other than just straight up selling beers at Corbett Field, how come, why was it such a big draw, do you think, in the Minot community?
You're talking about selling beers. I remember we had $1 beer nights, and those were some of the games that I wish I could have been a fan.
You Brockmeyer over here.
Everyone who was working at the stadium was really working hard to put together a good show, without a doubt. It was the first year and it didn't feel like anyone came into it and was completely raw. It just, the first couple games, we definitely had some adjustments to do, and we were made aware of that very clearly. But as we kind of got through things, our roles fell into their places. There were definitely a lot of times where I thought I was going to go deaf in one ear because I had like a mic or a earphone in that I could hear like the communication behind the scenes. But there was just a tremendous amount of effort in that first season. And to set the bar high, I think was one of the biggest goals, and I think that really pushed the off-field experience.
What do you think like the team's gonna look like this season when they do get a chance to play? Just because it's kind of weird watching it from the outside, where taking over for Daryl Handelsman at GM is Steve Wagner. He's a real nice guy. He's the GM, the team owner, and like the Expedition League president / like pretty much the total founder of the league. What on earth is that going to be like? It's kind of like David Stern running the Hornets and then not trading Chris Paul to the Lakers.
Right. You sound like you're a little salty about that.
I don't know. It's just kind of a bizarre scenario here.
Yeah, just pick a random bizarre scenario. I met Steve a couple times. I did an interview with him over the phone and had a couple conversations with him when he came to Sabre Dogs games. I don't know if it's out of necessity. I find it a little odd because I don't think he lives in Minot.
He's got a South Dakota area code, yeah. It's like North Dakota where the entire state's that area code.
Yeah. So I think you would know better than I do what the situation is. If it's not out of necessity, I find it's a little bit strange. But I know he's a guy who definitely, like, after my last game that first season, he was the first person to ask me if I wanted to be on board for the next year. Unfortunately, I couldn't take advantage of that opportunity, but I know Steve's a guy who's hardworking and understands people. I just think it would be pretty interesting to see how it goes if he ends up living in Minot, and then on top of that, still doing what he already does. And like you said, he's like the president of the league, and he founded the league, and he's been growing the league too. There are a number of more teams. I think there were only 8 teams when they started. So
yeah, and so I think when I've been talking to him recently, I know he has like the league office responsibilities and stuff, but he had a ton of confidence in the assistant GM taking over, Brett Schweitzer. He's got a lot of history around North Dakota baseball. I believe he was a high school guy at Dickinson and has sort of like a sports marketing management background. Like, I think I'm looking it up right now. He was educated, I think, at NDSU and did a little intern work with Badlands, the Big Sticks. You remember the Big Sticks and that heated rivalry, right? Of course.
yeah.
How could you not? Okay, yeah.
No, I mean, that really was, like, those were some chirpy games. Like,
Chirpy freaking games. I asked, Dylan Biggerstead and Keegan Stenvold, 2 Mile High guys, about, like, their worst baseball chirps, and, like, my number one reference to that to get them started was Seward. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, the swing and a miss, and it was Seward every time, no matter what. Yeah, but
that transcended the game.
Yeah, it transcended something, buddy. But yeah, just to put a bow on Brett Schweitzer, assistant GM of the Sabre Dogs right now. Marketing intern with Badlands during the 2018 season. He's an NDSU guy, sports management experience. So definitely Steve had a lot of good things to say about that guy coming up. And you saw a team that was led by the MVP of the inaugural season of the Expedition League. But the one thing that they couldn't get done was that playoff success where, again, they had their rivals, you know. How does the team find – I don't know how impatient a fan base can be about Expedition League baseball when they're having a great time filling Corbett Field. But at the same time, I mean, how does the team translate from having the awesome regular seasons led by our buddy Corey Thompson to winning the championship?
I mean, that was a tough game to watch too, because I remember that game that we lost. That I think that one basically meant that we were complete. the next 2 games were going to be in Badlands or something, because I knew for some reason I wasn't going to be able to do the championship game if we split. But it was weird because I remember that we were ahead and then just completely collapsed. Oh my gosh, my buddy Aaron Kern.
Yeah.
That was a meltdown.
Please put some respect on the MSU guy's name.
He was I did a lot of stories with him, and I loved doing stories with him because he was very chill, and he was from Minot State, and watching, he performed well basically all season, but just that game, he didn't have the heat, and it was a game that they needed to win to be able to continue. I think it was like best 2 out of 3, and that must have been
the elimination game, I believe.
Yeah, it was an elimination game, so it was. They were really close, you know. I don't think they're going to have to worry about people lining up outside Corbett Field with picket signs and telling them to sell the team or anything.
Yeah, there's plenty of other things in mind not to picket about. But, yeah, we'll leave it at that and switch to your what you're up to now. You're down in, South Bend, Indiana at another news station?
Yeah. So South Bend, for people who don't know, is where Notre Dame is. And if people don't know what Notre Dame is, I can't help you anymore with that. It's pretty big university, nationally known, and that's as much as I have to say about
Fighting Irish. Living under a rock, you're living in the past, man.
Yeah, well, they were good in the past, so.
Yeah, there you go.
No, I moved closer to home for me. I grew up North Shore of Chicago, and this is about 2.5 hours from where I grew up, where my parents still live. An hour and a half from Chicago. So it's one market away from the 3rd biggest market in the United States. So it feels like you're kind of in a big city atmosphere, like when you can go closer to there. But it's nice. I mean, I like the change. And I'm close to family. I'm still working, which I'm very happy about because I know a lot of people don't have the opportunity to work right now. So I'm pretty fortunate to be able to still go to work every day. But it's things are good.
You could have been, when you're talking about neighboring into a bigger market, you could have gotten a job like right by L.A. or like right by New York. What is it about like the Chicagoland area for you that does it for you?
Well, like I said before, because like I have a lot of family here. It's like when I was in North Dakota, and that for me starting out, I didn't have a lot of money, so it was tough for me to get out, and didn't have a lot of vacation time, and I kind of realized how much my personal life back at home really means to me, and wanted to make sure that I could kind of be back here for another contract and be able to interact with my family more, spend more time with them. Kind of backfired at this point in time, or throughout the whole coronavirus pandemic. But even before that, like I was able to spend I guess I worked on Thanksgiving and Christmas, but I've been able to go up to see my family a lot more. And then our family's lake house is just an hour away. So that's a great escape to be able to have right around here.
I'll see you there. I think they sent me an invite already. They didn't tell you about that?
Oh, no, they did.
Oh, okay, good. So just so you're prepared. Okay, good. Yeah. So you've been doing a lot of news clips, but also helping out covering Notre Dame sports, Notre Dame football. What's it been like covering a team that has that tradition, Notre Dame, the Bishop Ryan of South Bend, if you will?
That's right. The nationally known Bishop Ryan Lions.
That's right.
I think Notre Dame might have been founded first.
But, well, yeah, you're not dating back to when they were St. Leo's, though. It might be closer that way.
Was that Bishop Ryan of St. Leo's?
Yup, St. Leo's in downtown Minot. You got that Irish color on you already. You got to get the purple back on. But, yeah, I mean, obviously a ton of history, and it's a big-time program. What's it been like covering them?
It was really great. I mainly just covered the football season, and for some of my news content, I was out there covering the fan experience. And growing up I'm a huge Michigan fan. Was a huge Michigan fan growing up. Both my parents went there, and then I ended up going there. So growing up in that tradition and going to such a big stadium and a school that football is such a huge thing, it's very easy to appreciate what they got going on here in South Bend with the Fighting Irish. I was lucky enough to be at some amazing games when they played USC this year, seeing how intense the fans get while they're on the field. And Notre Dame's not they're not an angry fan base. They're not a savage fan base that's going to make you feel uncomfortable at their stadium. But they care a lot about their football program.
I think you would fit in well as like Jack Springgate, the tailgate correspondent. Is that what you lettered in at Michigan, tailgating?
When I had the time, yeah. No, tailgating for me, like I love to tailgate. Sometimes it was hard for me to kind of be around everyone having such a good time because I almost wanted to drop everything and join them, but I know I have a job to do. But yeah. Hopefully, if football gets going this year, I might get some Saturdays off where I can maybe enjoy myself a little bit.
Country roads up to Ann Arbor, where Will Arnett was during the war in semi-pro. During the poker game where they accidentally shot the guy. Tim Meadows, I think, was in like the huge cast or whatever. So you're a big foodie as well. When you go through like the tailgates when you were in school, what was your best food selection you ever had?
Going to tailgates at school?
Tailgates only, yeah. Or anywhere for tailgates.
Oh, well, I don't think I ate during tailgates while I was in college. It was a strict liquid diet.
Okay, I got you.
I would probably have a couple eggs or some toast before. But when I was growing up, going to games at the big house, my grandpa had tickets on one end of the stadium, and my parents had season tickets in the same seats on the other end of the stadium. So every time we'd go to a game, my grandpa had a handicap parking lot pass every year, and he had trouble moving around. But I think even after the years where like he would qualify for the handicap parking pass, I think for years before that, he would just figure out what color the parking pass would be and go to Kinko's and print it out and basically just have that the whole year without having to pay for it.
That Michigan ingenuity shows up from generation to generation in the Springgate line, it sounds.
They call it the Michigan difference.
Yeah, the difference. That way they can charge that much money for you to attend that school. I got it. That's fantastic, Jack. Congratulations for that.
Marketing.
Yeah.
But
with a capital M, with a big yellow M.
Yeah. But that's where I would, like, growing up, we would always get a big thing of fried chicken to bring to tailgates, and specifically cold fried chicken. So I've always kind of had like a knack for on cold games when it would get to the Ohio State game, we'd have some hot fried chicken. And yes, I have seen Michigan beat Ohio State before. It's not a myth.
Oh, really? Wow.
Uh-huh.
Something you can tell your grandkids about. Congratulations.
I've been to some amazing wins and some amazing losses.
If you're asking me, I'm more of a kebab guy because anything can go on a kebab, and it kind of aligns really well if like you have the shot ski right next to it, and that was just something that they do really well in Fargo. Any clashes so far around the office or maybe around the games, considering you are a Michigan fan and they play tons of times? Oh yeah.
Well, Notre Dame, not so much. This is known about me. Like, growing up, I despise Notre Dame with a burning passion. As the years have gone on, there are less Notre Dame fans around me to talk about Notre Dame, and there were some seasons where they were like ranked in the top 5 to start the year and unranked at the end of the season, and that just kind of it annoyed me. Growing up, I really had a bad taste in my mouth about Notre Dame, but that's not a problem anymore. So people, and a lot of the people at the station, most of them didn't go to Notre Dame, but there are 2 Ohio State fans in my station.
Just the ugliest ones, right? The ugliest people.
They all sit behind a desk.
Yeah.
One's an anchor desk, and the other one's an MMJ. It stinks because they're great people.
Yeah.
So I can't it's hard for me to say anything bad about them as human beings. But they do root for Ohio State, so that's just it's hard for me to stomach.
Yeah, for sure. I feel your pain. I'm a Penn State guy for sure. Besides, my school, Maryland, they don't really do anything. So growing up, that was where my affinity lies anyway. Talking about a legend would be just the legend of Michigan actually beating Ohio State one of these years. What do you think of Jim Harbaugh right now, and where are those wins? I mean, how much time does he have considering just, that's the be-all, end-all if you're going to be a Michigan team?
Yeah, obviously he's going to have to beat Ohio State at some point. And the way these rivalry games have looked in the last couple years, he had his opportunity in Columbus in 2016. That was my senior year. And I remember how upset I was at the end of that game. But feeling like the gap between Michigan and Ohio State from a year-to-year basis was closing. And in the last couple years, it's just Ohio State has Michigan's number every year. The last couple of years, Ohio State's been a great team. Michigan's been a great team too. But it's that last hump they got to go over at the end of the season for a team that's been preparing the whole year to beat you, no matter how they play. Even when Ohio State had that slip up against Purdue in the middle of the season, and Michigan, Ohio State, whoever was going to win that one, it seemed like they were going to go to the college football playoffs, and Michigan's defense just laid an egg. Ohio State came out with something they had done in no game prior, and it was perfectly suited to match up against Michigan's defense. I just feel like Ohio State has just been a little bit more passionate in their preparation. They've had great preparation for Michigan. Their recruiting has been better, but in these rivalry games, my freshman year, Brady Hoke was a 2-point conversion away with Devin Gardner from beating Ohio State, who was ranked 2 in the nation.
That's a blast from the past. Brady Hoke and Devin Gardner, number 98 at quarterback.
Yeah, yeah, in honor of Tom Harmon.
Yeah.
But it's Michigan's just got those. I feel like it's on game day. That's where the differences need to be made. On that Saturday after Thanksgiving, every year Michigan's just got to make those game day adjustments to fight harder, faster, stronger. That's what Harbaugh's got to do. He can beat basically every team if he's not having a down year.
This is basically a crying tears into your beers question for both of us, but I'll ask it anyway. Would you rather be losing to Ohio State big like Michigan has, or lose to them close or when you've led for a balance of the game like Penn State has?
Ooh. Last year, Michigan versus Penn State?
I'm talking about when both teams play Ohio State. So Ohio State has had some
Penn State keeps it close.
Ohio State has had some pull away games against the Wolverines, whereas Penn State was up by 3 scores in Columbus, and Saquon's one of his last games there when he ran back the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and then when Penn State was driving down by 1 and they called a quarterback option keep to Trace McSorley on a 4th and 6 that ended the game.
Yeah. I would, honestly, I think I would rather just have my ass handed to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes some getting used to from both sides, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I would rather just have my ass get handed to me because, at least you have closure in those situations.
Yeah. You know that you're not as good? For real?
Well, it's just all right, this year it's not happening. But I remember 2016. I was so mad when we went to double overtime. JT was short, that whole thing. There were so many close calls and close plays. I was so invested in that game. And the play before that QB sneak, three plays before Ohio State won it. It was 3rd and 12, some ridiculous stuff, and I think it was Paris Campbell was running back for Ohio State, and was like basically down 5 yards in the backfield and somehow got out of it and ran it 1 yard short of the first down line. And people forget about that play a lot. And I just think about the what ifs. What if we could have just actually brought him to the ground, and it would have been, instead of a 4th and 1, it would have been a 4th and 15.
Yeah.
Like those. That's why it's so tough. Like to get through it, losing a close game like that when there's a walk off, and it's just like the what ifs. Like
I will tell you a little bit, like coming from the Penn State perspective of eventually you're like sigh, groan, here comes Ohio State again, even though we're up by so many points. JT Barrett's going to have a perfect passer rating down the stretch in Columbus to steal the game when Saquon gives us our best chance to beat them. Or Braxton Miller does the back juke and shimmy shake into the end zone from the goal line after being nearly gang tackled by 5 guys. So, okay. And the last time in Happy Valley when it was real close on the quarterback keeper, I literally pull away from my Icebox tournament dart game to watch that critical play. Trace is blown up in the backfield, and I just turn away. And obviously, we've been cracking wise the entire time. These people are strangers, but they can gather how I have a little bit, I wouldn't say riding because I didn't have money on it, but I was invested. I was invested, to be fair, but it was a good afternoon nonetheless. And they were like, hey, your team just lost. Why aren't you pissed off? Why aren't you more upset and all that stuff? Direct quote for those guys, by the way. And I'm like, oh, it's Penn State, Ohio State. It's just a game, man. We're having a good time throwing darts. Was that 100% true? Probably not. But I wasn't going to ruin anybody else's day when they've been having so much fun hanging out and shooting, all afternoon. So that's pretty much all I got to say on that one. But did you ever get a chance to watch the Amazon Prime series All or Nothing with the Wolverines? Because it kind of shows how Harbaugh, he seems like a pretty fun guy. Is that really helping the recruiting good enough, do you think?
I think a lot of that has kind of faded.
Really?
You just don't hear the stories and
now he's like the hokey granddad dad joke guy now. He's not good enough in that regard, or what?
Well, you don't hear about him going and doing the sleepovers thing, or like going to see recruits with his shirts off and like playing football, like taking his shirt off. I don't know, maybe he's getting a little bit older. He's got a little gray in his hair. They say that the presidency can age you.
Yeah, okay.
It may be the same as a Michigan football coach. I just haven't seen that type of recruiting, but at the same time, I've never been a college football recruiter, and I can't imagine what that job is like, because you have to be a seasoned football mind. You've had to have some miles under you to be coaching at that high of a level, but you also have to be able to relate to kids who are coming straight out of high school and are about to be away from their families for the first time. Like, some of them maybe the first time in their lives being away from their families for that long, and like turning boys into young men. That just seems like a job that you have to have so many different your finger on so many different buttons to be able to pull off. So I can't question what he's doing. I would like to see us pull in some 4- and 5-star recruits, though. That would be kind of nice. Like, maybe go recruit in Florida or Texas or something.
Yeah, it sounds like you're missing that Pennsylvania hippie Chase Winovich already from the front seven. He's awesome. Speaking of maybe missing somebody, do you miss John Beilein coaching the basketball team right now for Michigan? You got Juwan Howard now. He's a marquee hire like Hardaway down at Memphis. I know it's early, but still.
Yeah, but there are some things that Howard's going to have to improve with. It's obviously his first head coaching gig, but when I'm talking about like the recruiting process and being able to relate to kids just coming out of high school, he recruited Chris Webber and Jalen Rose to join the Fab Five team, basically. I think he has a knack for recruiting. Just it being his first head coaching job, I really want to see him succeed, especially at Michigan, because that just means something extra. And Michigan's a place that really cherishes what they call Michigan men or Michigan women coaches who actually went to school there. I do think we've taken some huge recruiting blows, though, that are just so hard to stomach. And I even, like, even today, one of the freshmen from the team that he was able to re-recruit after Beeline left. We lost a couple recruits when Beeline left.
The 5-star Isaiah Todd, I mean, do you blame him for going to the G League? I mean, regardless of Michigan's program?
I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all. I just, it hurts because, like, it hurts when you get blindsided. Kind of the same thing to, would you rather get blown out, or would you rather lose in a close one? And this was one that, like, we had him locked in for months, and we were just waiting for Josh Christopher's commitment. Basically, every crystal ball had him going to Michigan. I don't know what goes into making those predictions, but, like, he would have been playing at Arizona State, which isn't a bad school. I would say in terms of basketball prestige, Michigan and Arizona State are probably right around the same level. And his brother also goes there. I don't know if he was telling people he wanted to go to Michigan and wasn't talking about Arizona State, but when he committed to Arizona State, I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And then 12 hours later, Isaiah Todd decommits and says he's going to go overseas and then to the G League, because the opportunity for him to go to the G League happened like another 12 hours after he decommitted. But seeing how much his commitment to Michigan was tied to the commitment from Josh Christopher to go there, or the appearance of it being that way, I don't know if that's actually the truth, but it just felt like that was it because they happened so quickly after each other. That's what was really frustrating, was like, if he wanted to go to the G League or if he wanted to go overseas and make money, that's all for him. I don't know what his situation is at home. I think for him, make the best decision for you. But it really hurt seeing him decommit after it felt like we lost 2 5-star recruits at the same time, which kind of did.
It's and 10 stars, today, man.
Yeah, even today. And then the transfers Michigan's had to make room for these guys. Like, we've had 3 players transfer and opened up scholarship spots because Jawan Howard probably told them, we're not going to have a scholarship spot for you on next year's team. You can stick around if you want to be a walk-on, even though you were on scholarship, or you can – the other option is they find somewhere else to play. So David DeJulius, Colin Castleton, and now Cole Bejma. They're going to be playing somewhere else next year, and they were going to be guys who had time in this system that were going to fill in some important roles, like Castleton and DeJulius would have slid right into where Teskey and Simpson were. So it was tough to see them go. And then when Beeline left, immediately after he left, we lost a 4-star recruit, Jalen Wilson, from Denton, Texas. He ended up going to Kansas. And so, like, today when Bejma left, is like the whole recruiting class that Beeline had before he left is now gone.
Well, the other side of the Michigan coaching change, of course, was Beeline getting that big deal in Cleveland. And I don't want to make this, like the thug slug meeting comment deep dive or whatever, but were you struck a little bit by how he wasn't able to lead an NBA locker room? It feels like the Cleveland was a team that was going pretty much full young, besides a couple of bad veteran contracts, where it just kind of blew up in everybody's face pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know what I can't say what the relationship is between these players and coaches, but you hear a lot of sports radio and podcasts talking about how the NBA is a different environment for players than NCAA is. I mean, you're not getting paid to play college basketball.
Oh, are they?
So,
no, okay.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Deep
Big
dive
surprise.
number 2, yeah.
You're not getting paid, so, like, a good attitude is the best thing that you can have if you want to get to the point where you're getting paid. And part of that's listening to your coach. And for Beeline being a college head coach for the 30-plus years he's been doing it, going to the NBA where now your life isn't basketball anymore. You have, like, there's so much more these athletes can do. You have money, you have friends around you that aren't going to school. Like, you don't have to go to classes. You're not a student athlete anymore. I imagine that was a tough transition for him.
This year, back in college, this year, the Big Ten was just ferocious, like top to bottom, just a complete gauntlet. I mean, you got a three-way tie for the championship and all that stuff. Were you a little bit surprised, even though the league was very tough, that the Wolverines, the way they started the season, all that battle for Atlantis championship momentum they had, rolling through UNC and Gonzaga. I know UNC severely bottomed out, but Gonzaga looked like a legit title contender once again. Any surprise that that was the high point basically for Michigan, and they weren't able to have a higher standing in the Big Ten?
I think that made it a really fun season. I think seeing that success, I mean, it seems like Michigan, when it comes to tournaments, has had a key to winning those preseason tournaments the last couple of years. There was a run right when I got out of school that we won 2 or 3 Big Ten tournament championships in a row. We won one of them as an 8 seed. I know Michigan has done well in tournaments in the last couple of years, and I'm not saying that's why they won that one. But I think the team got worn down the road. It was a much different John Teskey playing than we had last year. John Teskey was hitting 3-pointers and being a real offensive force in 2018, 2019. But this year, his senior season, he was very ineffective, it seemed, when he was around the rim. The offensive scheme wasn't even having him stand outside of the 3-point line. But Xavier Simpson was such a leader, he could kind of make everyone come together. I think when Isaiah Livers first got injured, Michigan lost 4 in a row at some point with him on the bench. He's a really good talent, and not just on the offensive end, but on the defensive end, he's so important as well. And then he came back, and we had other injuries. Brooks was out for a couple games, came back with a mask, but he's also a great defensive player and was blossoming as a great offensive player. He'll be back next year. But I think not having, when you lose a wheel in the machine that is your basketball team, you're not going to be able to run on all cylinders. That, I know, from a mechanical standpoint, when it comes to cars, it was completely wrong.
Thanks. Michigan take Ford.
It's not well, it kind of is an engineering school, but I wasn't an engineering student.
Who did you like going into the tournament before it was canceled?
Kansas has separated themselves. I think you could see that. I was just really excited to see a field that was going to have a lot of highly ranked mid-major schools like Dayton and San Diego State. Gonzaga's always there, and I always kind of root against Gonzaga in the tournament because they draw 1 seed, and
they've had their chance. They were in the finals against UNC, when UNC last won it in 2016. Mm-hmm. But besides that, I basically have them losing before the Elite 8 every year in my brackets. Yeah,
it's kind of a rule.
Well, that's what Kansas kind of does too. They separate themselves all year until then they lose in the tournament. But neither here nor there for those guys. Switching gears to the pro stuff, just a quick touch on what has been a cultural event. One thing that has captivated everybody on Sunday nights has been The Last Dance. What's kind of been your biggest takeaway of it so far?
It was really fun to watch. I mean, I think the most important thing is because it's something that, right now there's no sports on. So anyone who's thirsty for sports is watching this, without a doubt. And I'm recording it because normally I work Sunday nights. So I have a chance. I'll record it and watch it later, or if I finish early, I'll have a chance to watch it now that I'm because of the whole stay-at-home order thing. But I think it's bridging the gap between the people who have only watched LeBron growing up, and I'm right at that cutoff where I didn't watch any sports before 2002. I went to Michigan games for football, but I wasn't old enough to really understand what was going on or be able to appreciate how good some of these players were. So I grew up watching LeBron James is the best player in the world, and watching that style of NBA as well. And I think this gives an opportunity for people to actually see the context in which Michael Jordan was so freaking good. Like, you see, because they jump back and forth so much, you see how his game evolved, but you see how the players around him,
and how he became like a billionaire.
Yeah. Well, imagine like if Scottie Pippen was drafted in the year that Michael Jordan was. I feel like Scottie Pippen would also have revolutionized the league because he's just an athletic freak who was just dominating people, who had the skills of a point guard, but played a power forward position. I think Michael obviously changed the game completely, just with his athleticism. And when you see him scoring like 50 plus points a game, and the final score is less than 100, like you don't see that anymore because people just chuck up shots. Like there aren't plays that really whittle down the shot clock anymore. You're not seeing a lot of shot clock violations. I even remember watching, like I get Instagram updates, seeing the Pistons team from the 2000s that won a championship, one of their finals games against the Lakers. The Lakers scored like 69 points with Kobe.
Yeah.
What?
That Lakers team was stacked, too. That was, like, before they blew it up, like, when Shaq went to Miami, and they thought, like, hey, let's win Karl Malone and Gary Payton the championship because, this team would easily win the championship, and then they just got completely shut down by the Pistons. And I think it even, like, stands to reason. Like, there's the younger LeBron generation right now for sure, or even, like, people that identify mostly with Curry that, yes, they'll root for those guys. They'll see their live game footage against, like, guys in the 90s. And even when they're historians of the game, and I was born in 92, so, I mean, I wasn't really following, obviously, when I was crazy young or anything like that. I just have to look up stuff about the Bulls, too, okay? It's just, even for when people that look up the facts about it, it's just surreal seeing how it all played out. The way these guys' lives were, it's just crazy, and it means a lot. I mean, this documentary, I think, will have a really long-standing impact, and I don't know what the next subject will be that'll have just that kind of resonance with people. And I mean, you probably can't predict, like, the audience of, like, the pandemic and no sports, but still, it definitely means a lot already, and it's not even done. So you can definitely give credence to these Bulls teams, and you're from Libertyville, Illinois area, and you go up to Ann Arbor. Maybe there's some Pistons fans up there that really like the 2004 team that you mentioned, but all that around you, how come you ended up being a Spurs fan?
Yeah, this is something we haven't talked about yet. I grew up going down to Texas every summer from like 2001 until my last time. I went to the John Newcomb Tennis Ranch to train during the summers. And my first year going there, first time I went wasn't even in the summer. It was in the springtime. And that, I think, was when Nuke's budget must have been, like, enormous because somehow they took us to a Spurs game. And it was my first NBA game ever. I was, like, 7. And I was like, what is this madness? And that's, like, at the height of Tim Duncan just, like, taking off as a young player. I think Tony Parker was there. Maybe
he was young.
Sure.
When you talk about like Tony Parker showing up in relation to Duncan and David Robinson, for sure he was younger, and Manu as well. Yeah.
But I don't even know what happened in the game. I just know, like, the experience was amazing. It was my first NBA game, and I walked away with, like, this Spurs mascot Coyote Beanie Baby.
Yes.
That's still with us. And from that day, it was just, like, because I was able to then actually have watch a team on TV where I was like, holy crap, they're actually really good, too. So maybe, like, having been my very first game and then also be good.
When you're young,
I didn't know that they were going to win a championship that year. I didn't know they had won a championship 2 years before. But when they played the Pistons in 2005, my dad is a huge Pistons fan. That's why for everything else, I'm basically a Detroit sports fan. I like the Tigers. Got my Tigers 2012 runners-up sweater on.
Nice. Okay.
The Valverde games. Oh, yikes. I'll cheer for the Pistons. Like, I cheered for them in 2004, but then when the Spurs played the Pistons in 2005, it was civil war in our house.
Yeah. I was talking with our guy Ernest Bell from the Elite Academy. You know
Yes,
him
sir.
for sure. And we did a deep dive into like the super team debate, you know, when they really started and all that stuff, and like the latest iterations of picking which LA team was going to go to the finals this year. So just a new take that I want to have on it with you is a question that I forgot to ask him, and I really wish I would have when we were talking about super teams was, you know, when the Cavaliers and the Warriors went to the finals like years on end recently before LeBron went to LA, it basically was the ensuing year after LeBron returned to Cleveland. So, hypothetically, say if LeBron stays in Miami and Miami rolls through the East, do they beat Golden State in 2015?
Did Chris Bosh play in 2015, or did he have blood clots yet?
I'll look that up. Say that Chris Bosh is healthy on one of the Heatles teams that wins a championship. Did they beat the 2015 Warriors, which was the team that first they didn't have KD and they also weren't the 73 win team. They were like 67 and 22.
Yeah, that was their first championship.
Yeah, where like they came out of the woodwork and won.
I mean, the Spurs beat. I mean, this. I think that that Miami team was certainly one of a different age. Like, they had Ray Allen in there so that they could have some 3-point shooting. But other than that, none of those players were 3-point shooters. Like, that was still a kind of the team was assembled to play a 2000s game where you're not just having your best 3-point shooter pull up from 40 feet out and just drain them like Steph Curry was. The difference, I think, is you saw that Warriors team was built like so many of those dynasty teams, like the Jordan dynasty teams and the Rockets that won when Jordan was playing baseball. Those were built by drafting your core and then adding your like third guy for the super team. Like the Bulls added Dennis Rodman and later on, and they, I mean, even the first run, you'd say their big three. Their third was Horace Grant. They drafted Horace Grant too. The Warriors drafted Steph Curry, took him a couple years to develop. Drafted Klay Thompson, took him a couple years, and drafted Draymond Green.
That was like the first rebuttal against the Warrior hate was like, you can't hate when we don't have the high draft picks. Like, hey, the Sixers tried to get and they couldn't make a championship team. We just drafted really well, and yeah, sure, over the course of time, maybe they held it over people, but yeah, and even that Miami team, you talked about bringing in Ray Allen for that 3-point dynamic that they didn't necessarily have, despite all the skill players that they had. Even Mike Miller was making his shots during that run when LeBron finally won his championship. And to your point, just to prove that one end of the question, Chris Bosh was ruled out in February of 2015. So yeah, it wouldn't have happened with that matchup, but still, that was pretty much one super team era against the next one. And relating to you being a Spurs fan, the whole premise of this last dance is they pretty much knew they were going to be done after the 1998 season. If none of all the stuff that makes them break up happens and they come back and reload, how do you think the Spurs fare in 1999?
You can't really say that Michael would lose anything.
Do they get him to a Game 7? Because they hardly ever did that.
I don't know, because, I mean, the premier part of that team was Tim Duncan and David Robinson. And at that point, you got a 3-point line and some 3-point shooters. Like in Michael Jordan's earlier days, like John Paxson hitting a huge shot was not going to be you were never expecting a 3-pointer to be a game winner. It was like Michael driving and scoring. But I think as the game progressed, I mean, you had a Steve Kerr like player who was like there to primarily shoot 3-pointers, and Michael, as much of a driver as he was, like he could light it up from outside too. So I just think that there's so much talent on that team, and I think they would match up better against the Bulls. This is also a time where I didn't know what was going on in basketball. You know how like this is when I was like 5 and 6, so it's like it's easy for me to go back and look at like what was happening way before I was alive and could remember stuff and like what I remember. And
I'm getting the blast from the past too with The Last Dance, so I totally get it.
There's that foggy period when you were like from birth until you were like 6, where you're not really sure what happened.
Ask me about like which one of the Power Rangers was my favorite instead.
You were like, what were their names even?
Yeah. When you're getting back to Chicago, one of the big memories I definitely asked you about when this happened was that crazy Nats-Cubs game that you were at. It was David Bodie.
The Bodie bomb.
Yeah, he hit the grand slam, classic bottom of the 9th, down by 3 to win the game. I know it's just regular season, and you've been to a lot of places, but I mean, just that moment in that when the ball gets hit out of that ballpark. Where does that rank on just sports moments that you've seen live?
Yeah, I've seen some cool walk-offs in my day, but that was by far like the best experience I've had as a fan at a baseball game. So obviously, in the bleachers, I've been drinking. Scherzer was on the mound. I think Hendricks was on the bump for the Cubs. So two of the least hittable pitchers on either team. And it was close going into the end. And I had been to a couple of Cubs games that year as well. I think earlier in that year, I went with one of my buddies from Liverpool, and the Cubs were winning the whole game. And in the bottom of the 8th, they were playing the Cards. The Cards put up like 12 runs and just buried them, and it was so sad. So this was like a later in the year. And the drinks were flowing, so the first 8 innings kind of just like went by in a blink.
Nice.
And then they cut off sales, so we had no choice but to pay attention.
That's pretty late for a last call at a baseball game. Usually it's like 5th to 7th inning, but Wrigley's something else. So
7th inning stretch, I think, is when they shut it down. In Wrigley. But I could totally be wrong because I haven't been to a game since then. But I just know it was close, and I knew the situation, and at that point I was like, well, it's going to end no matter what, basically, here. And then he just wrung it out of the full. David Bodie, and I think he had another walk-off home run at some point that year, but the Bodie bomb was a legendary moment. And then I was with Ariana, who you've met, Cribs, and also with my friend Andrew Merrill, and the Cubs Instagram page posted that last year, and I immediately got that from my buddy Merrill, who was like, "Yeah, you remember these Bodie bombs?"
Just over here with the Bodie bombs. Classic.
Yeah, that was explosive.
Yeah, for sure. So the only other thing with pro sports that we haven't touched on with you, and let's be honest, we don't really need to, is the Detroit Lions. Obviously some fandom there, but I only want to bring them up for you to have a chance and the floor as we wrap things up to, first of all, give your well wishes to Mr. Evan Hunt from Minot, North Dakota, and as well as to possibly slam that Zionite Garrick Hodge, an inner-city Chicago rivalry between a couple of former Minot guys. So just go ahead, whatever you want to do to Evan and, there's filthy Zionites like Garrick.
Is this like my 30 seconds of fame that happens at the end of Around the Horn?
Yeah, you just won Around the Horn, yeah.
If this is like that, I wouldn't choose the Lions to waste my time talking about, because they're seriously, I can never really say anything good about the Lions just because they're pretty bad at winning football games. It's hard to be proud of them, but I was a Cubs fan for a long time before they won the World Series. So I can be on a lovable losers team, but the Lions are just like something else. It's like they avoid winning. I swear to God. I like how they were able to get DeAndre Swift, but I hope they're not giving up on their current running back situation. They have a pretty loaded running back room with both Scarborough,
Kerryon Johnson.
Ty Johnson, Kerryon Johnson as well. But it's the Lions. I think that's a saying. It's the Lions. And there's another one of the main anchors here at WNDU is also a Lions fan. And he speaks about them much more than I do because I'm a shamed Lions fan. I have no one to talk about them with, but it's cool to see that there's some more of us outside the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
Oh, you were talking about Garrett Hodge as well.
yeah. Evan Hunt and Garrett Hodge.
Well, Evan was a facilitator of multiple great evenings that we had. Probably some of our finer bonding moments were facilitated by things that Evan was able to organize. So nothing but love for him. And he can hit me up whenever he's in South Bend, if he ever comes to South Bend.
Yeah, see you there, man. But, yeah.
Garrett Hodge, I kind of wish we knew each other in high school. That would have been pretty cool.
I can only imagine. You don't see Bunchy Young running on the Zion terrible field in the Super Bowl commercial. He runs through the Libertyville Panther area for about 2 seconds.
You know we weren't the Panthers, right?
Well, it said Libertyville Panthers on it.
It says what? Are you sure?
Or Wildcats?
Yeah.
Well, you don't even know.
Hey,
there with your South Bend Bendies.
It was I don't think that's what they call them. They call them benders because we're always on one.
Yeah.
Do this. All right. That means it's time for me to hang up.
This episode of Migos Chat was brought to you by Jack Springgate. Jack, till next time, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks so much, Ben. Great catching up.